Yeah, Latonya Wilkins, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Change Coaches.
Hey, it's Kellen, and today on Diversified Game, I have a fun speaker, new author. You guys, links will be in the description box so you can get the pre-order if it's not already out while this goes out. But I have Latonya Wilkins, and she's going to give us the game on how she can make you entrepreneurs, especially, and executives better, because she is a team coach. Latonya, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and I'm excited to have some fun today.
Well, I hope that is, I hope it's not uncomfortable where we're crying like the old, talk shows where, they never loved me. No, that's not what we want to do. We want to talk about, what you do to improve people, because with the social media age, people are finding their coaches, their brothers, their teachers, all this stuff, but you focus on, making people better. I'm going to assume getting them organized and focused on the big picture. So tell the people about yourself and your business.
Yeah, so I run a company called the Change Coaches. I'm the founder, CEO of the Change Coaches. And what we do is inspire meaningful awareness and change in organizations. So the three big things we offer, number one is team coaching. We coach executive teams to create cultures of belonging. We also offer a regular executive coaching, and we coach the only ones at work. So people who are the only black person or only LGBTQ, like those types of folks. And then we also do a lot of customized workshops. So that's what we do as a change coaches. And then as me, I also do speaking, and I'm an author as LatonyaWilkins.com.
Well, I know you've heard this before, but I just want, for those, majority of the people are listeners, but for those who are watching, they're going to say, a change coach? This person, it just came out of high school. Black don't crack if you take care of it and don't smoke it. So, how did you get into the coaching side? Because you are, I'm going to assume, fairly young, and I want people to know like your experience before they find you and say, oh, that's why she's Yale, that's why she can teach us. Yale can teach us all day. But yeah,
I black don't crack. I look a lot younger probably than I am. Like I got last week that I looked like I was in my 20s, and I'm like, oh yeah. So yeah, I've got a very conventional corporate career, followed by, I guess, an unconventional entrepreneurial career. So my experience, Fortune 500 companies. I did even a lot in consulting, big five consulting firms. And so that was the first part of my career. And then I moved into leadership development, went to coaching school. So I actually have completed several coaching programs and have my credential. And then I did a bout in higher ed as a teacher, as a instructor, and then also leading culture at a top business school. So I've done a lot of different things. And so, yeah, I will tell you, I am the person that hates when people call themselves coaches and they are not real coaches, because it's really dangerous. It's like people saying they're therapists or trying to deal with trauma with people, and they have no credentials around. I mean, it's just not something we should be doing. But yeah, so I'm glad you asked me that, because that's actually something that I think the world needs less of, are people that claim they're able to do work like this and they don't have the credentials to do it or the experience.
Well, and yeah, and I like to make it clear for people like me, because I sometimes cringe when I hear people say I'm a life coach at like 21, and I'm like, you don't even haven't even done life. So I like to make it clear on, I hinted the Yale School of Management, but I mean, the woman also went to Manchester. I mean, this is a highly educated person. And I just want people to know before they reach out to you. Now, what is your like sweet spot that you just love to like find and coach people? Or what type of entrepreneur or executive do you love to have?
Yeah. So I would say like most of my time, about 80% of my time I spend coaching executive teams. And I love that. That's where I make probably the most impact. I mean, I would say it's tied with those, with the executive teams and the only ones at work. But the executive teams, the ones that I love to coach are typically quickly growing organizations. They are probably in tech. They are probably they're very open to changing their cultures, and they're willing to commit to 6 months to a year together in team coaching sessions and individual coaching sessions. So those are, I would say, that's probably my sweet spot. When it's the only ones at work, typically it's someone who is on an executive team and they are the only person of color on that executive. That's probably mostly what I get with them. And so I'm able to coach the person that is the executive and then their boss to make the environment more inclusive and empowering for them. So those are probably my two. I also love speaking. It's kind of crazy because we're in COVID, and so all my speaking has been online, and I find ways to do it. I found some different platforms, but there's nothing that beats being on the stage. And so I'm really hoping to get back to more of that next year. I already booked some keynotes in 2022, and I'm hoping that those remain in person.
And so for the entrepreneur out there who, they're growing their business, they're expanding. You even have now, influencers who have various people on their teams. Sometimes they get intimidated. They say, wait, a coach sounds good, but it also kind of sounds expensive. Sounds like, I don't need it. So I won't even ask. Can you tell people when they come to you in what range on a monthly or quarterly or even yearly, where do they need to be? So people don't contact you and say, hey, I got $500. Can I get a year of your time?
Yeah. So I'm going to keep it real here. So when I first started coaching, and I was doing a lot of coaching in organizations as an employee before I went out on my own as an entrepreneur. And when I started conventionally coaching, and what that meant is that I was going out getting individuals and doing individual plans with them. I was finding a lot of clients on Instagram, and I found that wasn't for me for many reasons. I think my MO is better used in corporate. That's not to say I don't do some of those types of engagements here and there. For example, if I have someone that's a huge fan of my services and has used them before, they might refer like their kid or their spouse or whatever. So I'll do those on a case by case basis. So if you like what you're hearing and you want to work with me, what I would say is, if you're an entrepreneur, you should have a professional development budget, especially if you are a CEO. So that's the first thing I tell people is, if you are a CEO and you're running a nonprofit or you're running a company, a small company, I'm stumped by how many people come to me and they're like, I don't have a budget. Okay, well, you should have a budget every year as your professional development, because otherwise you're not growing. So that's the first thing is, if you're like a CEO, come up with that budget. If you are an individual and you're loving what you hear, go to your boss, because there's going to be funds for you. And a lot of times in organizations, those funds aren't used or they're not used in the right ways. So you could probably, what I usually tell people is you could probably go to your boss. I could probably write a proposal and you could go to them and get your company to pay for either all or half of it. So that's really what I do. I mean, if you're on your own, I'm probably, I mean, there are some packages that I do that are lower touch and more high scale where you're going to be doing a lot of the work yourself, like checklists and things like that I can provide. But if you want that high touch, which is usually creates the most results, you're probably going to want to put a good investment into it. And if you need some help, either come up with the budget or go to your manager and get more money for it.
Awesome. Awesome. And it's crucial to know your budget. And for the entrepreneur who's listening and they say, okay, sounds like, it's going to be thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. But what type of returns have you seen? And I don't mean just money, but even in people, like how you've been able to blossom people, maybe getting them over, some hurdles, some trauma, some insecurities. Like what type of returns have you seen with your clients?
Yeah, so I'll talk a lot about some of the folks who are the only ones at work. And I've seen I coach people who are the only ones at work all over the world, because one was a Black man in England, and I'll bring him up because he was the only one on the executive team, the only Black person. And it's everything from clarity to confidence, promotions. He ended up getting promoted. I ended up having every career coaching client I've had has had some sort of promotion or a career change. I had one client, he got promoted twice during the time that we worked together. And he actually ended up getting some funding from his manager because his manager was seeing that this was actually increasing his productivity as well. I would say that one of the most meaningful was a client that I had, and she was the only executive on her team. It was a tech company and they just weren't treating her well. And when she came to me, she was completely like on her knees, very upset, kind of angry too, angry, traumatized. And so it was at the beginning, it was really hard to work with her because I think at that point she was skeptical of everything and her boss had paid for her to come to me. And one of the things that came out of that, and it's not necessarily what the organization wants, even though they paid for it, but she ended up leaving that company and getting a big promotion. And just now she's thriving, has more confidence. She has a better relationship with her team. So I might even be able to provide you with some clarity on next steps for you, and also provide you with a little bit more serenity as you move on in your career. So those are some of the things that I do and some examples, especially when it comes to the individual perspective.
All right. I know you entrepreneurs, you're always like, well, what's the bottom line? What's the point? But it's like therapy. I mean, try it out. And if it doesn't hurt, keep doing it. It hasn't hurt you. Now, when you talk about companies, hiring you for maybe one of their workers, how does that work out? Is it usually, let's say the Black person and the only one, right, in that department or in that company? Are they reaching out to you, or is their boss saying we need to better support this person and we'd like to bring you in? And I'm asking this for a reason, because a lot of times when the fox is saying, hey, this is how the hen house should work, they try to put us in these boxes and keep things safe for them. So I just want to know, like, who reaches out to you to say we need help typically?
Yeah, so the way it should work, so I could tell you about the way it should work and the way it works now. But the way it should work is you go to your boss and you say, hey, I want some professional development money for coaching. And these are some of the benefits I think it can provide. You go out, you talk to 3 coaches. Maybe I'm one of them. I always encourage people to talk to more than one because my style is different from other people. And then you go back to your manager and you say, okay, here are the three coaches, and this is the one I want, and take a look. What do you think? So that's the way that it should happen. The way it happens too much is I'll get a white executive reaching out, white male executive, and just keeping it real, because that's what most of them look like. And they'll come to me and they'll say, hey, I hear you coach the only ones at work. I have this person on my team that's a problem right now, and so can you coach them? And so and there's so many things wrong with that. So typically what I say is, hey, I give them the instructions that I just gave everybody else. Go to them, tell them, hey, I have some money for you. Would this be something you're interested in? And you find the people that you think would work. So that's how it, again, should work. If you're someone that's kind of on your own, then again, I would kind of come up with a budget and maybe 3 people. And again, like the budget that you may have may not be what the budget should be for coaching. It just depends on, again, what you want, the services, again, how much touch you want. If you want high touch, it's more. If you want less touch, it's less.
Yep, because you're paying for time, people. As a consultant, I just am very it's a touchy subject, because people, oh, hey, you mean this isn't free? You're brilliant. I can't get it for free. Nah,
no,
can't.
Don't ever ask me for that. So do not, do not.
Yes. So what, besides having something to talk about on your speaking tours, tell us about the book, why the book, and, how long did it take you, to create this masterpiece?
Yeah, I'm really excited, everyone. So I have a book out called Leading Below the Surface: How to Build Real and Psychologically Safe Relationships with People Who Are Different from You. And it's on pre-order on Amazon. By the time this airs, it'll be out widely. Go order the book. It's a book that takes on the surfaceness and confronts the surfaceness of corporate culture. And it's a book that genuinely guides you to build real relationships with people who are different from you. I'm also excited to announce that Amy Edmondson, who is the Harvard professor that coined the term psychological safety and the concept psychological safety, wrote my foreword. So it's really amazing to be endorsed in that way. And so the book is also already a bestseller, and it's on pre-order. And so I'm hoping, and I'm not hoping, I'm going to manifest that it makes a huge difference in business. Because the reason why I wrote this book is because I was constantly the only one at work in some of these corporate roles. And these DEI programs would never work. They were made for people like me, but they were ridiculous, right? Very programmatic. And I was complicit in all these programs, because I ran leadership development programs, and we talked about diverse talents and, where to move them, and like chess pieces. And so they just never worked. And so this book is a way to change the world and how we interact with each other, because we don't think about how we interact with people. We think about what we're going to get from people, right? Like when you think about corporate diversity, people are thinking, what am I going to get from Kellen if I hire him? Oh, I'm going to get representation on my team, instead of how are you going to treat Kellen, and how are you going to, develop real relationships as you hire people that are different from you. And again, it's diversity is the first step. Inclusion is like the hardest thing to do. And this book really helps that. And it will help entrepreneurs too, in the way that it'll help with your customers. If you have customers who are different from you, it'll help with communities. So I see a lot of entrepreneurs set up these communities, and making sure you're inclusive in your communities, that not like everybody doesn't look the same or feel the same. And so how can you connect with people who are different from you in your community? Like I might migrate towards people in my community that are like me, but what about people that are absolutely opposite, different from me? And so that's the book. I'm very excited, and yeah, check it out. It took about 18 months to write it from start to finish. I think I started writing it in probably March of 2020 when I had an idea maybe that January last year, started writing it. And then I got serious about it. I went through like a writer's workshop and a writer's group from April, May, like last spring. And so now it's out and we're in October. So it takes time. I'm thinking it's probably going to be the best investment I ever made in my business ever though.
No, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Can you talk about, for the person who may be listening and they may be a Caucasian person, executive, and say, we've done a lot, but companies don't always get it right. I often talk about an experience I know of personally with Zillow, and I'm like, how do you hire this person to deal with Black people? And they think, spending $100,000 on the Black ski weekend is a great thing to recruit people. I'm like, instead of going to the HBCUs that they know nothing about, right? So can you talk about, the just your experience in corporate, because you've been in this, and sometimes when you're in this for a while, you're considered safe. You won't start beating the drums like my Nigerian brothers when service isn't right at the airport. Can you just talk about your experience and what you've seen? Because I'm sure you've made great changes, but you've probably seen some great pain. I mean, it's hard to be the only one in an office.
Yeah. And I talk about this in my book. I mean, I'm going to admit it. I was the safe person and it didn't work. It didn't work. I tried to be safe. I tried to check the boxes, but nope, that did not work. And I was very unhappy. And I'm not going to lie and act like, oh, I just jumped out of this. No, that took a lot of time. It was like an existential identity crisis that I had to figure out what I was going to do. But, what was hardest is going into these talent meetings and seeing people like me constantly passed up for stupid reasons, like, oh, I don't know if she's ready. But then the next guy was a white guy and was like, oh, our kids go to school together. I mean, literally, this is the stuff that happens. And so with the safe stuff, I guess, I think that's what you're asking about, is being safe and what does that look like? And yeah, I mean, you have to make a decision, and once you make that decision, it takes years. And I just think one day I had this situation where someone just didn't like me at work, and they had a lot of influence and power, and I refused to change myself for them or try to at that point. And it just didn't end well on their end. And I ended up leaving. And after that, I was like, I never looked back. I'm like, I never want to work in an environment like that ever again. I'm not a piece of Play-Doh, like, and it felt like I was Play-Doh, and the Play-Doh wasn't, it was dried out for her and she couldn't move it enough. So then she punished me in all these different crazy ways that, I didn't even know she could do, but it's a trip, And so I want to leave with this, like, even if you are safe, it's not going to do much for you, right? I think we think that that's the formula for success, but it's not.
Well, sometimes it's even, I reference a Boondocks episode, the first episode, and Huey's trying to tell the people, giving them the real, you speak so well, and everybody's just clapping at the garden party. And so I want to go even deeper on the other side, because you are looked at, from the Black people as, you are the person who can help me in this scenario, but are you radical enough? Will you tell these people exactly? Yeah. Talk about how that.
Oh my gosh. I am so glad you brought that up. My gosh. I, to be fair, I don't see it as being radical or not. I see it as being, embodying a new type of leadership and a new type of being that's going to make you happier, that's going to make you feel more confident, that's going to bring you less stress. And these are resources I never had. And and that's why I always say to people, I might not be your coach. And I'm confident about saying that. I am not, my big influence was my grandma. And my grandma, migrated from Jackson, Mississippi in the 1950s because my mother went and drank from a colored fountain and refused. And it was right after Emmett Till was killed. And she migrated from Topeka, Kansas, Jackson, Mississippi, Topeka, Kansas to Iowa. So I grew up in Iowa of all places, and people make fun of me for that, but it's because my grandma was running away from racism, and that's how I ended up there. And, the reason why I'm sharing this is because my grandma, even after all of that, she was just an inspiration to so many people in her life. And she was all three of those matriarchs, her sister lived into their 90s. And it wasn't about being radical, right? It was about, progression for us as people. And that's how I see it. I see this as a holistic thing. And it doesn't make me any less Black or any less credible because I'm not out there, talking about this in a certain way. I think there are other people out there that are doing that, and that's great. And I think we need all of it. And so I think that I'm so happy you brought this up, Kellen, because it's like, sometimes we expect that all Black people have to speak the same way or all be very, radical in our language, but that's not true. I mean, we need other voices, and I'm happy to stand by those radical voices. And again, I think, but a lot of my work is more from the holistic side of things.
No, I love it. And, there's various communities. It's not just us, but when you're Black, it hits. And I know that, the LGBTQ community you support, and someone could say the same thing. You're not pushing our issues enough. It's like, I got to fight on all levels from every community. And, if you don't say us first, and it's like, my goodness, let the woman work, let her. Yeah.
It's interesting. And one more point about that. So in my book, I talk about the terrible three biases and that are tearing up our workplaces. And one, affinity bias, migrating towards people like you. The second one is confirmation bias, like basically confirming your biases. And the third is in-group bias. And when we're thinking about in-group bias and the issues with that, it's like what you just talked about. It's like, again, there's a solidarity is one thing, right? But when it's to the point that everybody outside your group is, othered and outcasted, that's been me. And so I don't want to perpetuate that again. I think there's other ways forward. Again, you can have a strong in-group, but it's just question that if it's becoming to a point where that's all you care about, because in order to have belonging in the workplace, we have to get outside those lines.
And I love how those of you who are listening, when she moved closer to the mic, because there was like a beeping in the back, and such a professional, she got closer to the mic, and it made me move my mic even closer, because I was like, yeah, I love it. Now, can you tell the people, with all the success that you have had, and the best is yet to come because you're so young, what is a community give back that you are doing or that you would like to do in the future that you haven't mentioned?
Yeah, so I'm in Chicago. So for those of you that are hearing all the assortment of sounds, I'm in Chicago proper. So that's that's the nature of the beast here. So I'm the president of the True Star Youth Media Board, and that is an organization, Chicago-based organization. And what we do is we have youth media education for underprivileged youth, mainly on the south and west sides of Chicago. And so we go into schools. We also have digital programs. I absolutely love this organization. We're growing really fast. It's like a social entrepreneurship company, also a nonprofit. So we're doing a lot from the educational end. I mean, we've had kids go through our programs that are now, like, one works for the Atlanta Hawks. So again, this is not small potatoes. Like, we are, another one is a huge lawyer here in Chicago. And so I just love watching these kids and seeing what they do. And they're really the future. And they spoke out a lot during the pandemic. And it's just really nice because I think a lot of times we were trying to tell kids stories in what they were going through and not being in school. And so it was so nice to give them an outlet to really express what was really happening and not by from the adult perspective. And so that's a big thing I do. I would say that's probably where I spend most of my time. I'm on a couple other boards too. But that's probably my baby there.
No, awesome. Well, tell the people where they can connect with you. You have some beautiful websites. I'm definitely going to have the links in the description, but give them your last words and where they can connect.
Yeah. So Latonya Wilkins. So Instagram at Latonya Coaching, Twitter at Latonya Wilkins, LinkedIn, Latonya Wilkins. And then if you want to check out the book, go to leadingbelowthesurface.com. Again, leadingbelowthesurface.com, just spelled out, and you could find everything there.
You guys have been blessed by the game. If you do nothing else, share this with someone. It will change their life. Be blessed.
Hi everyone. Have you ever been curious about visiting Africa? Which African country were you interested in? Kenya, Nigeria, Uganda, South Africa, Ethiopia? Which country are you interested in? My good friend, Kellen Cash Coleman, came up with a course called My First Trip to Africa that'll guide you through this process. It's only $20, and in this course you'll learn about passports, visas, vaccinations that you need before you go there, as well as a budget, how much the trip is going to cost. He also talks about what you should pack, what you should take with you, how you should travel on a budget. Did you know that $100 is worth 1,000 South African rand and over 10,000 Kenyan shillings? So imagine what you can do with $100 back home. I say back home because I'm from Sudan, I'm African, I already know how it's like. I know that, when you convert Canadian and American money, it goes a long way when you're traveling across Africa. So if you're curious, if Africa is a place that you've always wanted to go, always wanted to move there, Kellen Cash is the person to ask. Check out the course. There's a little preview you can listen to before you actually purchase it. If you're interested in this course, visit www.diversifiedgame.com. Don't miss out.